To all units, proceed to your post assignments. All units, proceed to your post assignments.
Federal agents just kicked in doors across 3 states.
I just heard the loudest blast in my life.
I was scared. I'm not gonna lie to you, I have never gone through this.
And what they found blew the lid off America's most volatile movement, Antifa.
It's a terrorist organization, in my opinion, and we're going to find out. All those questions are going to be answered.
But what people really need to understand, Antifa, is that their true enemy is our system of government and our society as a whole.
The FBI and Department of Homeland Security just revealed they've taken down the operational core of Antifa, a network prosecutors now tie to arson, charity fraud, and coordinated assaults on police. In Georgia, 61 defendants were charged under the same racketeering laws once used against the mob. In Portland and Chicago, federal task forces are rounding up suspects accused of domestic terrorism. For years, politicians called Antifa a myth. Now, grand juries are calling it a criminal enterprise. And behind the arrests, encrypted chats, and out-of-state funding trails, a web of ideology that just got dragged into the daylight. This goes beyond street protests. This is organized resistance, and the government just declared war on it.
Antifa beats journalists. Antifa attacks our police stations. They attack our courthouses. They dox our law enforcement officers. No more. They are a terrorist group, and we are coming after them.
We are here at the White House today to unmask Antifa, to follow the money all the way to the top. If you want to get to the bottom of who is fomenting this chaos and violence in our country, you must follow the money.
I was a mainstream reporter in Seattle for 10 years before I quit mainstream media, in part due to its refusal to acknowledge the dangers of Antifa and radical left-wing violence.
Part of the problem that we have is that a lot of people refuse to believe that Antifa is real. It is just a made-up thing, but I have seen them. They are real, they are dangerous, and they are violent.
They are an organized, systemic, international criminal enterprise. And what the FBI is going to do is trace the money, follow the funds, and find every single person that was involved in funding the riots and the violent acts of criminality that they are perpetrating on our street.
I've watched Antifa brutally beat, harass, and threaten Americans in the street, but all of that ends with the Trump administration.
I was brutally attacked and almost killed by Antifa in the streets of Seattle. All of my colleagues have been attacked. I can't think of a single one who hasn't. Violence against journalists and police officers in our streets can't stand.
Just days ago, I was in the Portland jailhouse, and now I'm in the White House. This administration is built different, and Antifa's days are numbered.
And I want to thank President Donald Trump for designating Antifa a terrorist organization, and I'm looking forward to the FBI and the DOJ hunting down these people like the terrorists that they are.
All I gotta say, it's a bad day to be Antifa.
And Antifa's days of using violence and intimidation against their political opposition are over.
And I've continued to report on them over the years, despite the threats of violence and actual violence that's happened, because I owe a thank you to this country, the United States, for settling my parents who were victims of communism in Vietnam.
Yeah, baby, it's episode 2 of Probable Cause on October 14th, 2025. Jeff Norman and Greg Dillon with you, as we are every week on this, the second episode of our brand new podcast. And tonight, our special guest is Kenneth Strange Jr. Ken is a former FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force Special Agent. In his 21-year career in the federal law enforcement business, he has also served as a USAID fraud investigator and a DOJ special agent in charge of compliance investigations. His company, Development Fraud Investigations, provides investigative services and fraud-related training to NGOs and nonprofits throughout the world. He's also a licensed private investigator in California, the feces capital of the world. And he is the author of 2 books. His most recent one is A Cop's Son, One G-Man's Fight Against Jihad, Global Fraud, and the Cartels. Welcome, Ken. How the heck are you?
Thank you, Jeff. I'm doing great, and it's wonderful to see my colleague Greg Dillon.
How are you tonight, Greg?
I'm great. I'm thankful for Ken being able to join us tonight, and I was lucky enough to meet him in person a couple of years ago in Connecticut, and we've stayed in contact ever since. If it wasn't for the distance, I'm sure Ken and I would socialize regularly and be very good friends, because we have a lot in common, and we share a lot of the same viewpoints, and we just enjoy each other's company. So thanks for coming on, Ken.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Well, I should tell Ken and the audience how this came together, because I haven't read Ken's book, but I hope to read it soon. And if we don't alienate Ken too much in it, maybe he'll come back and we can do a deeper dive, just as our relationship got started, Greg.
Yes.
Greg and I were talking about who would be a good expert to come on to address the Antifa situation, and he said you. So that's why we invited you, and haven't read the book yet, but like I said, I will soon, and hopefully we can have you back to do a deeper dive. I noticed you have all positive reviews, though, so that's good.
Well, I have 40 relatives that have chimed in on the book. I'm joking, but thank you very much. Yeah, it's been mostly positive reviews. Yes, exactly.
So in the opening, the last piece of footage you saw was independent journalist Andy Ngo being attacked by what he calls Antifa, and a lot of people do that. I'm not so much skeptical as I am a little bit confused about how we determine that Antifa is in fact a group, as well as like what the significance of that is. I'm leaning more towards just accepting it because Jonathan Turley, whom I respect greatly, has been calling them Antifa, and he wrote an op-ed in The Hill that was published a couple of days ago. And this quote says, "The denial of the existence of an actual group is meant to deflect the discussion of the rising violence from the left as these same politicians fuel the rage with reckless rhetoric." Okay, I buy that. But I'm not trying to deflect it. I have been well aware of Antifa ever since Trump ran for president, and the people attending his rallies would get beaten up outside as they left the rally. I'm surprised that never got more attention than it did. And I remember then people were saying, well, that's Antifa, that's Antifa. So, and I've been following the situation for years, but nonetheless, how do we determine they're a group as opposed to just, some like-minded kindred spirits who are prone to, some of the same behavioral traits?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I think what you have to do is really, put these folks in these cities, because they seem to be these street groups and individual, the soldiers in these individual cities such as Portland, Eugene, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Chicago. And I think what you have to do is find out the funding sources. And I think if you can do that, and I think the FBI can do that, they have the expertise to follow the money. They certainly have undercover agents and informants that could penetrate what seems to be look, I'm going to call it for what it is. This is Antifa. So I think the FBI has that expertise to penetrate the group, and also then to find the funding sources. We have, and Greg can attest to this. We have specialized fraud units within the FBI that would only be happy to look into those things and put it all together.
Well, I guess group is not the only, or organization is not the only keyword. The other keyword might be terrorist. So what does it mean? I mean, I don't think there's any official definition of a terrorist group, but maybe there is. Does it establish that certain crimes can be charged, whereas if they weren't a terrorist organization or a group, they couldn't be? I mean, is that the significance of it, or is this just, political rhetoric?
Well, no, I mean it's linked to it's certainly linked to violence, and it's basically a group that has an ideology that foments and carries through with violent acts, and I think you can see that every night in Portland, and you've seen it all the way back to the George Floyd BLM riots when you would see these crazed individuals, these young men and women, many of them looking homeless or freaked out on drugs, actually pummeling people, beating people. In fact, I remember there was one stabbing of a black man, multiple stabbing, and this person was part of that group, and this person actually did 0 days in jail time. So this is the former administration and the left deflecting from this group. There's nothing here to see, gang. Nothing here to see.
Right.
These are just crazed individuals. But that's about it. That's all.
Well, we have some footage actually of a Trump rally going back to 2017 in your beautiful state of California, where I lived for many years. And you just mentioned, the police didn't do much. Well, that was one of the observations here too. Let's take a look. This is an ABC News report. And as I recall, I don't want to just show YouTube video after YouTube video. If anybody doubts me, you can check. But the point I want to make is it didn't just happen at one rally. It happened at multiple rallies. Greg, you're nodding in agreement, right?
Over a period of time. This has been going on for years now.
Yeah.
Breaking news overnight, those violent clashes at Donald Trump's rally in California. You see those protesters there, they attacked Trump supporters just after Trump spoke, and ABC's Tom Yamas was there. He's on the scene now in San Jose. Good morning, Tom.
George, this was one of the most violent scenes I have ever witnessed at a Trump rally. At times, it seemed like the police had no control of the situation. People were getting beat up right in front of them. And these were not clashes. These were pure attacks. Trump supporters, men, women, even the elderly, left this building last night and walked right into danger. Overnight, all-out brawls outside the Trump rally in San Jose, California. Trump supporters harassed, beaten, and bloodied by mobs of protesters.
They were spitting on me and stuff.
This man says he was sucker punched, his clothes torn off his back.
7 more people just come in, start punching me. I look pretty bad.
This lone female Trump supporter tried to stand her ground. Her sign torn from her hands, her glasses ripped off, then shoved in her face. A woman wearing a Trump jersey cornered and then egged in the face. Fights breaking out in the streets all over the convention. Inside, Trump spoke to a large and welcoming crowd.
We're going to build that wall. Don't even think about it.
But outside, protesters accused Trump of being a racist and hunted down the people that support him.
Another fistfight's about to break out right now. Trump supporter is getting pummeled right now.
That man eventually fighting his way back to police. At another point, protesters followed this couple, violently harassing them, then storming the parking lot where they tried to escape. Protesters shaking cars and smashing taillights. Drivers forced to hit the gas to get out. Police were there, armed in riot gear, but from what we witnessed, reluctant to initially stop or engage the protesters. Then this, a young man running in fear from protesters, then getting tackled before breaking free. We point him to police.
There's a cop over there.
This Trump supporter walking with his wife, spat on, bottles thrown at them, then punches. He says it was the only way he could get out.
What am I gonna do? I had 10 people throwing punches at me.
Now, there were some peaceful demonstrators last night.
All right, well, enough of that. I let that go for a while because I wanted to convey how much violence there was. It wasn't like just, one little situation. Obviously that's abhorrent behavior, but again, I don't know how you establish that's Antifa as opposed to other hoodlums. But one thing I wanted to follow up on, Ken, and maybe you have a take on this as well, Greg. The financing of it is an issue.
Yeah.
But are we talking about financing like in the realm of paying for signs, paying for transportation and so forth, which has always been, what goes on, like unions do that kind of thing at rallies? Or are we talking about paying the protesters? Because a lot of Trump supporters say, oh, these protesters are paid. Which of the two are we talking about?
Yeah, if I could, I think, you look at these groups and you know that they're not self-funding themselves. They've got to eat, they have to drink, they have to go to hotels. And so, they need money. They're getting it from somewhere. And again, I think it's these sources, funding sources in the country and things that are coming in from overseas. Now, all of these lines of funding, they're opaque, they're confusing, and they're done on purpose. That's the way they want it. But, what we just saw is horrific, despicable. Nobody's being held accountable for these actions. And we're seeing, and I've seen this before, we're seeing that some of the same people that show up in LA are in Philadelphia, are in Chicago. We can prove that. Greg, I'm sorry, it took you.
No, and the next layer that I think has to be examined is some of these people are finally being arrested, and they immediately have an attorney. They immediately post bond, and that is not cheap. I mean, these are people that look like they sleep on their parents' couch in the basement. So when they show up at court and they have a criminal defense attorney privately paid and they're able to post bond, it immediately should trigger some curiosity as to how someone that is living, hand to mouth, is able to walk out of every police department and courthouse on bond and with private counsel.
Well, covering the expenses, that part I can definitely believe, but I'm still not hearing an answer to my question. Do you guys think that they're paying the protesters to protest?
I know, I'm not sure about that, Jeff, to answer that, but we know that the organizers for these street groups, for the soldiers, are getting paid. I remember one individual got like $75,000 in New York to kind of get these people together, organize them, and get them going. But, to what Greg said, as far as lawyers go, I believe that you can see the National Lawyers Guild is in bed with this group. And in fact, you can see them wearing these green caps from time to time.
I remember when I lived in Los Angeles, they would always show up at the anti-war rallies and everything.
There you go. So they're in place and they're working with these groups.
Yeah.
Jeff, I mean, 1 second, but just to go back to that, if they're being paid, they're going to eventually, the FBI will use forensic accountants to do a deep dive into some of these people's finances and see if they can trace any funding coming in. But on the same token, if I offered you an all expense paid vacation somewhere, right? I'm not paying you to go to that vacation, but if I am paying, for all of your travel expenses and your food and your lodging, then basically I am paying you. I'm just not paying you.
Right. Well, the devil is in the details, as the saying goes.
But if I invite you to a rally and I say, okay, here's your shield, here's your helmet, here's your gas mask, here's your sign, and here's your food, and here's your water. I am basically paying you, but I'm just not paying you money from my hand into your pocket.
Well, my sentiment is with the Trump administration, at least on this issue, not with these protesters, but I'm just trying to be fair and it just doesn't seem realistic to me to think that very many of them are being paid. And the reason is they don't seem very bright, and it doesn't seem that difficult to uncover it if they're being paid. I mean, they have to go through some process of recruiting these people and paying them. And, I'm sure that now that the FBI is investigating it, they have the resources and skills to uncover things that wouldn't ordinarily be revealed. But still, you got to put ads out. It doesn't seem that hard. There's plenty of undercover journalists and stuff who've uncovered stuff like this. But I haven't seen any evidence of, I've seen fake evidence, there's a Craigslist ad or something, but I don't know. It just doesn't. Also, I don't know that they need to pay them.
Correct.
From being in Los Angeles, I rubbed elbows with these people, and like they really believe this. This is how they are.
But Jeff, just to go back to what the point you were making is, first of all, we don't know, what the FBI knows at this point. They already may have enough evidence to show that people are actually being paid. We don't know that, but this is just the initial stages of the investigation. So between, inserting undercover agents or getting confidential informants or confidential sources, or flipping people that have been arrested and now decided it's in their best interest to cooperate, then I think, we'll begin to discover, if people are being paid, how they're being paid, how much they're being paid, and the extent of these payments. So that's
the government certainly seems intent on finding out whatever they can find out. There was the footage you saw in the opening was at a roundtable discussion that was held at the White House just a few days ago. And some of the folks who were in that video are people who have been attacked. Some of them are independent journalists, and they were there to tell their story. Andy Ngo is just the most famous of them, but the others have similar stories. Many of them have huge followings on social media, which I mentioned because that's a part of turning the tide as far as public opinion goes.
Sure.
So it will be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, and I think the FBI will squeeze. They'll pick out the vulnerable ones and they'll squeeze them and they'll work up the ladder. You know that, Greg. That's how that works. So
it's an organized crime case, Ken. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, Jeff, between the mafia and the Antifa. Except, the mafia was all about money and power. Antifa is more about the power.
And what's interesting, and just to follow up on that, Greg talks about the mafia, the mob. It's kind of a similar situation because, before the mob or the mafia was discovered in Appalachian, New York, maybe in the late 1950s, it was just a concept. It was just an idea, kind of what Democratic Congressman Adler was telling everyone. Nothing to see here. Antifa is a concept, but then that all changed, just like with the mob and just like this. So declaring.
Yeah, that's that very analogy that you just made is what Professor Turley made in his op-ed.
Well,
so what do you think about the new FBI in general? It sounds like you both are on board with this effort to investigate Antifa, but plenty of other stuff going on too. Recently, some FBI agents were fired because they kneeled at a BLM protest. I'm not sure exactly how long ago that. Oh, there it is, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think about that?
Greg, I'll let you go first. I'll chime in.
All right. Thank you, Ken. My initial reaction was that they justified their cowardly behavior by saying they were in, quote, survival mode, unquote. And Jeff, if I can ask you, put up that photo again. And, Ken, you tell me if you don't agree that the young lady who's smiling from ear to ear looks like she is in survival mode at that point.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And, if you go further back to the, it looks like a young lady in that same photo, and she's like severely overweight. I'm wondering how she even got in. How did that lady get into the bureau?
But, the one standing up behind
standing
the
up, like,
tuna?
with the mask.
Ken, she was later promoted. My understanding is, I wouldn't swear to it, but she was later promoted to an ASAC position after that incident.
Well, of course, nothing but the best. But my understanding of that particular situation. I heard one excuse from one of our liberal bureau colleagues, just mentioning that this was something that the supervisors lost control of, and so we have to take that into account. And And don't be so severe on these brick agents that you see right now. Is the supervisor's mistake.
Is there a connection between the ICE protests that we're seeing and Antifa? Are those protesters in Portland, for example, are they Antifa?
That is my understanding. And just an aside, Jeff. I'm out here in California. You've been out here in California. A few weeks ago, you remember holy hell erupted in Los Angeles. They destroyed police cars. They had weapons, bricks, very, very organized. And then they went out near my house and ICE raided the Glass House Farms. They uncovered all these like 30 juveniles and all of these illegal migrants with criminal records. But the interesting thing was, and I did a little bit of undercover myself. I went out there and without mentioning my background, and I started talking to these people, and they said, "Oh, we got this from the beginning. As soon as we heard, we got we knew they were coming. We started making our phone calls. We went to the NGOs. We told them to roll, get down here now, and unleash holy hell." So this is very organized. Between foundations and NGOs, it's scary.
So I take it then you approve of using federal troops to assist in the situation. I guess it's a twofold purpose, if I understand it right. One is to protect the federal buildings, and the other is to fight crime, although they can't put hands on fighting crime, but they can sort of, by being there, create a deterrent. Am I saying it the right way?
Well, I think we touched on this last week, Jeff, to a degree. They can perform duties that are not arrest related, but free up the personnel, the law enforcement personnel on the ground, so that they can effect arrests and take people into custody. So it having them there frees up the police officers to do the actual hands-on police work while they can secure premises, protect buildings, guard entrances and exits, that type of thing.
That's right. And they are a deterrent. I mean, if you look at the recent situation in Washington, D.C.,
sure.
The crime vanished within those weeks. It just went from, 68% to almost zero for homicides. And, they were a deterrent.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, if you establish certain priorities and really follow through, there tends to be results. The border situation is a good example of that. Everybody seems to agree it's down to almost zero illegal immigrants coming in. However, one thing I haven't heard point out, which is sort of obvious, is doesn't that also indicate that it was never really necessary to build the wall, right? If they didn't build the wall, but they cut it down to zero.
Jeff, the wall is a concept.
Much like Antifa. You're actually right about that. It is it was meant to portray Trump as, the guy who's for very strict border enforcement. It's a visual that sticks in your mind.
Exactly.
Jeff, when you mentioned the Washington D.C. Crime rate, and Ken, when I was to put things in perspective as far as the homicide rate. Now, this area, Washington, D.C. is not a huge area. I believe it's a third of the size of Rhode Island. Rhode Island, from year to year, over the last 15 or 20 years, their homicide rate has varied between 25 and 35 a year on average, right? The year that I left Washington, D.C., the violent crime squad, there were 486 homicides. Now, that number by 2012 went down to 88 for the year. So that just gives you some sense of the amount of lawlessness that was taking place in a relatively small geographical area. There was more than a homicide a day. And I hate to even admit this because it's a little embarrassing in hindsight. When we used to leave on a Friday, we had an informal office pool of how many murders there would be over the course of the weekend. And that's how outrageous it was. I mean, it was sort of like Chicago, except in a very confined, small geographical area.
And, Jeff, excuse me, in my book, I talk a little bit about the lawlessness in D.C. because, I spent a few years there as well. And, to serve subpoenas in Southeast was a pretty dicey prospect. And I remember one of our auditors got off on the wrong destination out in D.C., and he was beaten to within inches of his life. He sustained severe brain damage, and was just very sad.
Yeah, some of these videos are just very difficult to watch. You mentioned brain damage. Here is, I think this was in Berkeley, also in the same era as the previous video, when Trump first ran. Here's a guy who got whacked over the head with a U-lock. And again, this was attributed to Antifa.
I'm gonna hurt you! You have a mask on! Motherfucker!
Oh shit, he's bleeding! Yo! Hey, medic! He's bleeding! Hard!
And Andy knows sustained injuries that caused brain injury as well. That's serious stuff. I mean,
tough to watch.
Yeah.
Terrible.
So this Saturday is another one of these No Kings rallies. I would have thought that they already achieved their goal, because after their previous No Kings rally, it seemed we don't actually have a king. But once again, they want to protest what is that called, knocking over a straw man? When you
straw man argument, or
yeah.
Well, no, I know this is just an all-purpose phrase for hating Trump and objecting to various issues. Now, this Antifa issue is already in the wind. Let's see if I can.
But Jeff, do we see the irony of the president just pulling off this huge accomplishment in the Mideast, and within days, they want to, demean him with this ridiculous No Kings protest?
Well, I think this was planned for a while, wasn't it?
Oh, I'm sure it was. Yeah. None of these things are spontaneous. Let's face it.
Yeah.
But they're going to keep at it. They'll keep at it and at it. Whether it's harping about the shutdown, or you're a dictator, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist. That will never end. Although give Hillary some credit. She came out and said Trump did and his administration did some good work for once.
But Ken, I'm just curious. She is still not completely in the clear. And I'm just wondering, in her very cunning way, is she trying to position herself so that she will not be criminally prosecuted?
It had crossed my mind. And I believe a former president is in London right now, meeting with the prime minister, and maybe asking Scotland Yard what they know about what they may have done to Trump. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it may also be a case of what can she say?
Well, I mean, she could be like President Obama and say nothing.
Yeah, I suppose. Did she come out and issue a statement, or was she answering a question that was put to her?
I thought it was a volunteered statement that she issued. Yeah.
It looked voluntary to me.
Right. All right. Well, other FBI related news is that the former director James Comey has been indicted. Today's news I don't think is huge, but it's just the latest news about some discovery. Trump was claiming that I guess the other side shouldn't be able to see certain things, and this judge ruled no, they can. That might be a question more for lawyers, but what do you guys think about Comey as a? Did you know him at all? Is one question. And what do you think of him?
Well, I met him once in D.C., and I think it was a function for Attorney General Ashcroft, and I was introduced to him. That's the only time I met him. But, here's an individual that just seems to, go right up to the edge. And sometimes he's staring into criminal activity, and then he backs off a bit. But I can never forgive the man for ambushing General Mike Flynn. Flynn is new, and Comey says, well, I know this wasn't protocol, but I had to do it. I just had to do it. I grabbed some agents. Maybe that was struck and they killed, who knows? But they ambushed him. They didn't even give him a fighting chance. And, what is Comey involved in that? He's the head of the FBI.
Well, what do you think of the indictment? Is the indictment a solid indictment? Probable Cause is the name of our podcast, so we should focus on, is there probable cause or not? What do you think?
Well, just by the fact that grand jury indicted him, that's probable cause. But the threshold now is going to be beyond a reasonable doubt, and I think that's going to be difficult. Not impossible, but very difficult, especially in light of the fact that the jury pool is going to be from the Northern Virginia area, which tends to be much more democratic.
They haven't even said what the lie is. I mean, it's a two-part lie. The second part, we know that he supposedly lied when he was testifying before Congress. But the first part that would establish it as a lie, we don't even know. And this is something that I've observed before. I'm wondering if you guys have ever encountered this issue or thought about it, which is that I don't know how often it happens, but it happened to me actually in a situation when I was arrested for doing a hidden camera prank. And they said I was, it was a disturbing the peace violation. But this prank went on for 4 days. And I don't even know what part of what I did they think was breaking the law. That's when I first actually experienced that. And I was like, I just couldn't believe that they weren't saying what it was. And then in the George Zimmerman case, I remember they never specified what he did that was illegal. I mean, I know that he fatally shot Trayvon Martin, but a fatal shooting isn't always illegal. It could be legal if it was reasonable to believe it was necessary in self-defense. And they go to trial without even anybody knowing, well, what about it made it illegal? So does this happen a lot? That how are people supposed to prepare for their defense if they don't even know what the accuser says is the thing they did that's a crime?
Sometimes I think it is, the process is the punishment, as they say, and, they're going to get their pound of flesh one way or another. I mean, George Zimmerman, I'm sure, has never fully recovered from what he experienced, financially or emotionally, physically. And, it may be the same approach with former Director Comey. I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, I think he's gotten away with a lot of things that have ran the statute of limitations, Ken. So he's probably dodged a couple of bullets. But this is, I guess, their chance of putting him on trial and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I think at a minimum, it's going to, if you're going to shoot the king, don't miss. And, this is, I don't want to call it retribution, but if they don't do anything, and certainly there is some probable cause, then this will just keep on going and going, and then when the other party gets in, they'll more of the same. So these people have to be held accountable.
Right. Well, let me put it more philosophically or in ethical terms, as opposed to whether or not the evidence is really there. Trump was obviously, not only Trump, but everybody in Trump world, his attorneys, for example, were subjected to vicious lawfare. So my question for you two guys is, do you think, in the same way that all's fair in love and war, when it's actual kinetic war, the kind when you're firing missiles and things at people, do you think that in the realm of political lawfare, it's legitimate to fight fire with fires? In other words, even if there's not a particularly strong case, even if you wouldn't normally prosecute, is it legitimate, in your opinion, philosophically or ethically or anything like that, to go after some of these bad actors who were very naughty previously?
Ken, I'm just going to throw one thing out there. Jeff, I think it depends on whether you consider this accountability or retribution. I guess it depends on what team you're on. The Trump team is saying this is nothing more than accountability. The other side is saying this is nothing more than political warfare or retribution. And who's to say which of the two it is, or is it both?
Well, I'm just saying hypothetically, like instead, I'm not asking you to judge any particular case. I'm just saying if hypothetically they don't really have a strong case. I don't mean only Comey. I just mean any of it.
Well,
Is it necessary? Because otherwise, the argument to do it anyway is it's the only way to achieve, mutually assured destruction, right? Because if they don't do it, the other side's not going to stop doing it to them. The other argument is, oh, come on, two wrongs don't make a right. This is just going to perpetuate it. Personally, I'm kind of torn, but I'm leaning towards fight fire with fire.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing, but it always helps to have a case. And if you look at, if you look at this Attorney General in New York with the mortgage fraud, I mean, there's something there. Letitia James. So there's something there, and
Well, I hope so, because she's nasty.
Nasty.
And, yeah.
You're
I mean,
coming
she
in
actually campaigned by saying she's going to get Trump before any particular crime was identified. Talk about not identifying a crime. That's like find the victim, and I'll find the identify
Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, retribution I'm against, but if there is something there or very close to there, like Comey, I'm sorry, I'm going to push back. Otherwise, these people, when they get back, they say, well, you're kind of weak, and this time we're really going to put you away, and we're going to put you in leg irons like we did that one, Peter Navarro. He's in his 70s going in leg irons. Why?
Yeah. Well, on our other podcast, The Whiners, we had the author of Defiant, Christina Bobb, who was Trump's attorney, on, and you should read her book. I mean, I'm a guy who thinks, I feel like I know more than the average person about this, and so I didn't really expect to be affected the way I was by her book, but it made me so angry. It looks sort of like when I read Greg's book too, when you really see all the details.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
She was the one who was at Mar-a-Lago the day of the raid.
Ooh,
She was just there to as a formality to take note of handing over the evidence, and then prior to the day of the raid, and so then the day of the raid they called her and said, "Get over to Mar-a-Lago. We need somebody there."
Unreal, unbelievable.
I'm curious as to your insight on this, because we've never discussed this, but I still am trying to wrap my head around you using an FBI tactical team to go into a property that is already secured by the Secret Service.
Right. It's a good point. And look, it comes down to sheer intimidation. That's all.
Yeah.
We're going to make you suffer. We're going to bankrupt you. We're going to put you in jail, you and your people.
And humiliate you in the process.
Exactly. And we're going to put the fear of God into your followers as well. Look what we can do to them.
Yeah.
Look what we can do to you.
Oh, this is actually very fun. I'm going to see if I can find it. Did you guys see this? I think this just came out in the news today, that not only was she perhaps committing fraud with the house that wasn't actually hers, but her niece is a criminal. Hold on, let me see if I can find it.
Whoa.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything about this. This is
to me.
Here it is. I got it. This is all the good stuff. We don't miss any of the good stuff here. Check this out. Is that too small to read?
I can read it.
Grand larceny, burglary.
Wow.
And a bunch of other charges that are all about the same thing. These are the nieces that were living in her house.
Ooh. That's
the house that she said she was living in, I guess.
Oh my!
So it seems that maybe the person she should be prosecuting is her own niece.
How ironic! How ironic!
Yeah,
that is amazing news. I'm not surprised.
She's wanted in North Carolina, where I live.
Okay.
So, Ken, what do you? Let's talk about your. You are a private investigator, or at least licensed to be that, and then you run a business called Development Fraud Investigations. What exactly does that mean to idiots like me who don't know, the average layman? Let's say, can you explain?
Well, two things. Number one, I actually I'm no longer a PI in the state of California. I actually dropped out about a year ago, at about the same time that we closed shop on development fraud investigations. But development fraud investigations was a bunch of us from AID, former FBI agents that would actually go out and we would do seminars and presentations about fraud in the NGO world. Developing countries and things of that nature. We also would work cases. They would different NGOs would hire us to do fraud investigations as well. So we were all over, basically Africa and Latin America. We did a lot of work there. Much of it successful, but there came a point where my partner, he had other things. He actually lost his son. So and then it kind of left me by myself. So I decided I'm going to write books for the rest of my life.
Not bad, not bad. And Greg decided he's going to do podcasts.
It's a good field, I'm telling you, Greg. It's a good field.
Hey, I love the hours, Ken. It's 1 hour a week. That's my kind of schedule.
But what an hour. Wow.
So I mentioned our other podcast before, The Whiners, which is on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. And our guest Thursday night is Ryan Dawson, who just came out with a 4-hour documentary about 9/11 and the origins of it in his eyes. So I wanted to tell our audience to tune in and also to ask you two if you have any particular take on the 9/11 investigation in terms of was it the real story or what is the real story or anything like that.
Well, there's litigation pending, right? There's a civil lawsuit now. I guess it's been approved to go forward by the families of some of the victims, right?
They're suing Saudis, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the Saudi government. Yeah.
Oh, the Saudi government. Right.
Right. Which will, the discovery motions will open up all types of material that previously have not been known to the public.
Mm. Yeah. Well, Ryan Dawson's theory is that the Saudis were involved, Americans were involved, and Israelis.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, we discussed this, Jeff, about the Israel connection. What's interesting, of course, is most of the hijackers were Saudi. And I've heard all kinds of things about people playing the stock market and knowing ahead of time and, this person bought this or dropped this stock, but I don't know. And secrets being kept in the government, between governments. Greg, you and I know that keeping a secret in the government is you just can't. It's going to come out. But my pet peeve was against the CIA because they knew about the hijackers in San Diego, the two Saudis in San Diego, and they said nothing. They didn't share that information with the Bureau. Maybe the Bureau wouldn't do anything with that information, but at least they had a fighting chance if they did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, there were enough red flags there that this probably could have been intercepted, but we didn't operate that way back then. Unfortunately, information was compartmentalized. Agencies didn't like to share. There were rivalries. Right. I think a lot of that has changed, but back then, that's how it was.
Yeah, he's right. We were operating in silos. Even, I'm in Newark, and then you had New York. And at some points, we were chasing the same people or trying to recruit the same people there was no real communication
Yeah.
between offices only, what, 10, 15 miles away.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, look at Langley and FBI headquarters, right?
Right.
You could drive back and forth between the two every day, but there was that artificial wall there.
That's right.
Well, for those of you who are interested in this topic, we're going to do a deep dive. There is no deeper dive that I can think of than a 4-hour documentary, and I'm halfway through it now. It is really dense, tons of information.
Ooh.
Very hard to digest, actually, but interesting. So check it out on Thursday night.
Absolutely.
And let us remind folks about Greg's book, The Thin Blue Lie. There it is. And you can get it at his website, which is thinblueliebook.com. If you want it autographed.
I love that book. That's a great book.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much, brother.
I agree. Absolutely. You never know, when you do a podcast and you have authors on, you're not going to say it's a crappy book, so you just sort of hope it's good. And I read it and I thought it was great. I really loved it.
Thank you, Jeff.
You have another book. You have another book in you, Greg, or not?
I do not. Thank you, but no.
Come on,
you're a great writer. You're a great
Go
writer.
undercover, Greg, Antifa or something. I'll back you.
No, I'm going to just ride the coattails of this one as long as I can.
I thought you must have had a ghostwriter, because writing is, I'm sure you have to write up reports when you're doing police work, but it's not exactly the same skill. You're a great writer.
Thank you.
And what about you, Ken? Did you write, you're writing your own books? You don't have ghostwriters or assistants?
Yeah, no ghostwriter. Of course, reports do help. They keep you, they keep you in tune, in sync. But I've been writing since I was about 11 or 12 years old. So I love writing, and I've got another book coming out in 2026 about Saudi Arabia. So.
Is this fiction, nonfiction, or what?
It's nonfiction. It's called Land of Sand. I spent 5 years there. It's it's a travelogue comedy, coming of age love story with behind the scenes. It's I was teaching at the school for the Saudi royal family.
Oh, and I haven't read it, but I saw your first book. That was kind of a travelogue too, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. Yeah. It was travel adventure, the pilgrimage in Spain.
That's a good genre. I should do that with wine. What a perfect excuse to just go all over the place drinking wine.
Jeff, you think that Ryan Milton is well traveled? Ken, how many countries have you been in? 26?
65.
Okay, I was way off on that one.
I didn't even know there are 65 countries in the world.
I think there's like 170 countries.
Wow.
I'm not even halfway there. But I love to travel. Yeah.
All right. Well, you have mastered the art of living. That's for sure. All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. And like I said, if we didn't alienate you, I'd love to have you back after I've read the book and we can discuss it more in depth.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
All right. And thanks, Greg. Thanks to our beloved audience. Join us next week, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. for Probable Cause. Take care, everybody.